The internet is a pretty big place, and it can be a scary place too. But really, it's mostly just people making up stuff to scare other people. But still, on the internet, there's some pretty scary stuff. My name is Poi, and welcome to the Internet Horror Iceberg. If you didn't know, this is part 2 to a different video, and now I'm covering layer 2 of the iceberg. You don't really need to have seen the first video to understand what's going on in this video, so there's no need to go watch that one unless you want to. Last video, I talked about some pretty common stuff like Herobrine and Jeff the Killer, but with this layer, there were honestly some entries that I didn't even know what they were. So hopefully this is gonna be a good one. Abandoned by Disney is a creepypasta that's about Disney World, but it's not really exactly right. Where this guy goes to some underground facilities in Disney World and, you know, things don't always go as planned. He starts seeing spooky stuff. Alice Isn't Dead is a podcast in the same universe as Welcome to Night Vale, which is an entry that I covered in the first video. This podcast takes place in that universe in that same town, and basically it's about this missing girl and they're like trying to find her, and it's called Alice Isn't Dead because they think she's not dead. Alter is a YouTube channel for horror stuff. They post a lot of short films that they make, and then they also take submissions from other people and other artists, and they'll post their art on their channel. Alter has a whole lot of different like varieties of horror, like there's psychological horror, slasher, creepy doll stuff, like murderer child kind of stuff, you know, there's everything on there. And they're all pretty high quality, it's pretty cool. Analog horror is a term that most of you are probably familiar with, but I'll just cover anyways. Analog horror is a form of found footage horror that blew up on the internet recently. It takes place with found footage of VHS tapes that are usually made to look professional almost, like they're usually network broadcasts or employee training videos or things like that, things that are made to look official. But then in that there's like clues and scary stuff and scary videos like a Mandela Catalog I covered, and the last one is analog horror. Battington is a YouTuber that makes videos on like FNAF and analog horror, both of which I love. So this channel is right up my alley. I think that FNAF is like one of my favorite horror things. I love it, and I love analog horror, so this guy's channel is pretty great. Been Drowned is another pretty famous creepypasta. It's about a guy who's a sophomore in college who comes across a copy of Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask that is haunted, he thinks, by a kid named Ben who, you know, guess what? He drowned. The way he gets it is that he's walking back to like his apartment one night, and there's an old man sitting outside of his house who's trying to give it to him, right? And he's like, how much does this thing cost? And then the old man's like, just take it for free. And then he plays it, and then it haunts him, you know, blah blah blah. Also guys, I'm sorry about like the wet hair and stuff. I just got out of the shower and I thought that these videos would be better with like my face in it, so you're getting the wet hair. Let me know in the comments if you want my face or if you want me to go back to the ones that don't have my face in it. Just let me know and I'll do whatever y'all want because these videos are for you guys. Anyways, moving on. The Legend of the Black-Eyed Children is a really cool piece of like internet folklore. I think it's really interesting. The legend goes that typically on a poorly lit like road or at a rural residence, there will be these black-eyed children between the ages of I think like 9 to 16 or something like that, with entirely black eyes. And then they'll ask to enter into whatever you're like. If you're in a car, they'll ask to enter the car, and if you're in your house, they'll ask to enter your house. And it's said that as soon as you give them permission into whatever you're in, they then kind of take control. It's like a demonic kind of thing. But basically their thing is that they won't force anybody to let them inside. All they'll do is they'll just keep insisting and asking over and over again until they let him in. The origin of this legend is still kind of unknown, but it's believed to have started back in the 1990s, which is pretty crazy for a legend that's still pretty popular on the internet. Blank Room Soup, also known as soup.avi, is a creepy video. It's a video of this guy sitting there crying and just eating soup, and then these two like characters come up behind him and start like patting him on the back with like these really weird costumes on. This was a big mystery for a while until it was realized that, I forget his name, but the characters are a part of this play director's like costumes, and they're characters that are commonly used in his work, so it's believed this video is just an extension of that guy's work. The Blue Whale Challenge is something that is still kind of a mystery to me personally. Like, I don't really understand how it works entirely. But basically, people are given a list of 50 tasks to do, and they are then also asked to provide photographic evidence that they actually complete the tasks. And these tasks can be anything, except for the last one is always to commit self-unalive. And this is pretty popular with kids back when it was around, and it gained notoriety because a lot of news outlets started talking about it and like talking about how these kids are like, you know, committing self-unalive, which is really scary that just some internet challenge can actually cause like that level of damage. Carmen Winstead is a creepypasta that I actually really like. It's about this girl who moves to Indiana named Carmen, and at her new school she doesn't really fit in the best. She gets bullied a lot, and then one day during a fire drill there's like a open grate of a sewer system, and the bullies decide to throw her down there, and the bullies tell everybody that she just tripped down there, and then when they finally actually get her back out, she's dead, and like the fall killed her. She broke her neck. But then people at the school started receiving emails from like an anonymous account or whatever saying that her death was not an accident, and that if that person didn't forward the email to other people, they would meet like a grisly end, which happened to everybody who didn't forward the email. This is like those really dumb
"Hi, my name is Carmen Winstead,"
but like real, like in the story at least. And I think it's really interesting. I like this one a lot. It's creepy. The Charlie challenge is a really dumb challenge where you get a piece of paper and you draw like in a checkerboard or whatever, like yes, yes, no, no. And then you put a pencil and then another pencil on top of it, and you say Charlie, blah, blah, blah. You ask it a question, and then it's supposed to move the pencil to the answer. It's really stupid. All the videos of the Charlie challenge actually working are just dumb. They're faked, obviously. This one's pretty stupid. I think it's not really scary. I mean, I don't know, because I just got scared really bad, but... Crypt TV is another YouTube channel that hosts a lot of short horror films, and I'm pretty sure they worked with the guy from Dead Meat. I remember them doing. I think it's like that YouTube channel, and they're pretty cool. They make some like actually high quality stuff, so I check that out if you want to see some horror short films and stuff. Cupcakes is a fanfic about My Little Pony. In this fanfic, one of the main characters, I mean, I can't be asked to know their names, I'm just gonna be honest with you. She like turns like murderous and starts like killing people. Oh no, poor ponies, right? But she kills, I think, Rainbow Dash because she wants to use her in a recipe for cupcakes. So she like eats her in the cupcakes, which is where it gets the name Cupcakes. And I mean, I guess that's kind of cool, but David Firth is an animator on YouTube who is most famous for making salad fingers, which you've probably heard of and we will talk about later on in this Iceberg, which is awesome. But he's also made other stuff like Burnt Face Man, which is a cool series, and he does a lot of stuff other than salad fingers. So if you like salad fingers, go check out his other stuff. Dead Bart is a creepypasta about a lost episode of The Simpsons. Basically, it posits that there's a lost episode of The Simpsons where Bart is on an airplane and he just jumps out and dies. And then the rest of the episode is about his family realistically dealing with the grief of that, and there's even a shot of like the graveyard that is supposed to be really, really heart-wrenching, but it's a creepypasta. Don Kenn is a horror artist who like draws pictures, and his thing is that he draws everything on post-it notes. All of his drawings are like horror pieces with monstrous creatures next to children, and they're always hanging out together, the children and the monstrous creatures, and that kind of adds like an element of childhood to the horror, which always makes horror better, if you ask me. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is honestly one of my favorite pieces of horror on the internet. It's like a spoof of shows like Sesame Street, where it's all these puppets and it's like a kid's show, and the beginning of every episode starts with it being like a normal kid's show, but then towards the end of the episode it gets more dark. It's hosted on YouTube, and I remember back when I was like younger, I found it when it first was coming out, and it kind of scarred me. There's an episode where one of the characters is lying in a bathtub full of acid, and he's just kind of sitting there just like dying, and I think he's like talking to one of his friends while it's happening, and I saw that and I did not sleep for like weeks. It's really scary. It's one of my favorite pieces of horror. I love it. I love the idea of combining like the old childhood nostalgia stuff with horror. But anyways, EverymanHybrid is an ARG on YouTube that started out as just a normal like fitness vlogging channel, but then it got darker as it went on. There started to be a lot of sightings of Slender Man in their videos, and then there was also like other characters like Habit and stuff that made it into like a really subtle but intriguing horror story. It's also kind of non-linear, which makes it interesting, kind of sets it apart from other ARGs online. Eyeless Jack is kind of a terrifying creepypasta. It starts with the protagonist's friend moving in with him, And as soon as that happens, weird things start to happen. Like one night, the protagonist wakes up and just sees a dark, glooming figure over him that identifies itself as Eyeless Jack. The thing is described as being a humanoid creature and looks like a human, except for its eyes are gone and its eye sockets are just completely empty, giving it the name Eyeless Jack. And Eyeless Jack's like thing is eating kidneys for some reason. Like in that story, he wakes up, sees Eyeless Jack, and then when he wakes up again, like the next day, there's a cut in his side and his kidney is just missing. And then Eyeless Jack has become a pretty popular character in the whole creepypasta sphere. Like there's so many stories about him and he's been used a lot, but I think it's pretty terrifying. Fake video game anti-piracy screens refers to how, so in a lot of video games, right, if you get an illegal copy, the game, like the console will kind of know that, and then it'll give you a screen saying like, hey, this has been copied, this is not legal, blah blah blah, you stole this. And those screens kind of became popular, and then usually it would even have like some kind of disadvantage to you if you're playing a pirated game. But then horror comes in when there are fake ones where like there are stories of how people would buy an illegal copy of a game, and then it would have one of those screens, but it would have like something creepy on it. It would have like a virus or some kind of like demon in it or a ghost or something. Here are a few examples on screen, but I think it's pretty cool. GEMINI Home Entertainment is another pretty popular analog horror series that posits itself as these home entertainment like broadcasts, right? But then through these broadcasts, we see that in this world there are aliens that kind of use humans as vessels to spread a disease. I think it's called like wood rot. And basically it's kind of like an alien takeover, but through these diseases, where the analog horror shows like how to avoid it and stuff, but it's pretty scary. Happy Appy is a creepypasta about another kid's show. In this one, there is an anthropomorphic apple that basically kind of goes around like helps kids when they get hurt. It's like the kid's show. But then, according to the creepypasta, things get sinister. The apple starts like hurting the kids even worse, killing them, mutilating them, etc., instead of helping them. Happy Tree Friends is kind of a similar thing to Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. It's another kid's show. This time it's animated, and every episode starts out normal, and then things get kind of gruesome and gory and bloody, blah blah blah. And I think that there's a real kind of spectacle about taking a children's show and then making that into horror. Something about it to me is just extra like terrifying. Like it just like makes me like, you know, shake. Harmony and Horror is a web series that takes place in the FNAF universe, and basically it kind of just goes into the lore of FNAF that's hinted at in the games, but this series makes it more actually applicable and like easily readable. It's just somebody's take on FNAF. I think it's pretty cool. Hi Walter, I got a new GF today is a horrifying, amazing video on the internet. You can still find it on YouTube right now if you want to watch it, like after this video, obviously, because I need, you know, all the watch time. But the video is about this guy talking to a camera. He says, "Hi Walter, I got a new girlfriend today." And he tells this whole story about how he met her in the mall and they went shopping together. And then he's like, "Hey, do you want to see her?" And then he turns his camera around, opens a door, and there's a girl like tied up, screaming on the floor. He walks in the door, shuts it, and then the video ends. And it's pretty obviously fake. Like the commentary from the guy is like not really well acted, I guess. But it's still a horrifying concept, and I think that the execution is pretty perfect. I love it. It's terrifying. hiimmarymary is another web series that I think is one of the best like ideas for a web series. It's about this girl who wakes up in a house that she has no idea how she got there, no idea why she's there, when she got there, or anything. She has no memory at all. The house is completely empty, devoid of any life, and when she looks outside, it's always dark. Like always is dark and empty outside. And throughout the days, over the weeks, she starts seeing entities, supernatural entities, physical entities, psychological entities, and they all just kind of work to scare the hell out of her. They kind of tug on her specific psychological fears and stuff. It's a really neat concept, and I'm not going to spoil the ending or anything, but it's amazing. Lasagnacat is a hilarious horror series online. Its name comes from, you know, Garfield, right? And basically it's like a live action reenactment of a lot of Garfield comic strips, but with like an eerie twist. It's really just surreal and scary, but not in like a creepy way. It's more just in like a what the hell am I watching kind of way. It's just like, it just is uncomfortable, you know. It's just really uncomforting. I think it's Go watch it for yourself. It's hard to explain, but you see the footage here. Laughing Jack is a creepypasta about a character named Laughing Jack. Basically, there's a kid, right, and he has an imaginary friend that he keeps talking to, who calls himself Laughing Jack. He's a clown, and he's really like well known for his disturbing and scary laugh. Basically, he's just an imaginary friend that starts out nice, but then starts telling the kid to do certain stuff, and he gets violent towards people around him, and it's just all kinds of psychological horror. Eventually, his mom kind of starts suspecting that maybe he isn't imaginary, and then that's when it really gets creepy. Lavender Town Syndrome is an interesting case. It's this creepypasta about how in one of the Pokemon games back like way back in the day, like the 90s, there's a town called Lavender Town, and there's a song that played during that section of the game. And in that song, there's a frequency that only kids can hear that is dangerous. There were accounts of kids who like started self-unaliving after hearing that, like immediately after hearing that, and in the story at least became like a really like well-known like thing. Here's a little bit of what the song actually sounds like. Lights Are Off is an analog horror series that, from what I can tell, seems to be anthological, so it's not like connected. The episodes aren't connected. Each episode is kind of like its own story, but maybe I'm wrong. But basically it's, as the name suggests, videos where the lights randomly turn off. And the footage comes from random places like inside stores or outside at parking lots, you know? It's kind of like a voyeuristic kind of thing where you're watching these people and they don't even like know that they're being watched, right? And it's kind of creepy. It gives a vibe of like, are you being watched? Are you being watched? Local 58 is a analog horror series that kind of takes an interesting, unique turn. It's posited as a news anchor, like a news outlet, right? And most of the stuff is normal, but then some stuff that it tells you to do is kind of scary. Like it'll give the news like regular, but then it'll give you driving instructions that tell you to just drive off into the wilderness and basically unalive yourself. I kind of like the unique take on analog horror here. It's great. Lonely Girl 15 is a web series on YouTube about a girl named Bree who's just a teenager and she's just vlogging for fun, it seems like, until things kind of take a sinister turn. Basically, you kind of learn that she's in a cult and that she's kind of scary, and there's just a lot of like horrifying stuff that goes on. Like it starts out as her just living her normal teenage life, and then it just gets progressively worse and worse. Until eventually, in 2006, it was confirmed that it was actually fake. But back then, they didn't even know it was fake. And if you notice, I said 2006 is when it ended. So this is one of the first actual like horror web series online. MeatCanyon is an animator on YouTube who's best known for how he animates like well-known characters in horror scenarios. Like he'll animate Peppa Pig killing somebody, basically. It's kind of funny, but it's kind of scary too. Mereana Mordegard Glesgorv is a creepypasta about a YouTube video with the same name. No shot, I'm not gonna try to say that again. But basically the video is supposed to be just a man with like a red background staring at the camera intently for 2 minutes straight. And it's supposed to cause kind of like, you know, horror effects, like it'll make you want to self-harm or harm others, is the idea of the video, is that people who watch it end up being found dead. But, you know, it's not real. Monument Mythos is, I guess it's analog horror, kind of. It's like a web series online that gives a horrifying lore to all of the American monuments, like Mount Rushmore, the Lincoln Monument, Statue of Liberty, like, you know, all of them. And basically it's about like some secret government organization and stuff, which if you know me, I hate that kind of storytelling, but this one's actually pretty cool. This one's really subtle about it, and I think that subtlety always works better in horror. And you know, Wendigoon has an amazing like 4-hour or something video about this. It's insane. Go watch his video if you want to learn more, because I cannot explain it as well as he did. Mr. Nightmare is a content creator on YouTube who I actually used to watch a whole lot. He's kind of what got me into horror. His content is that he'll just read scary stories, you know, in his voice. You know, like all those content creators have like a special like really deep voice they read it in that's really scary. But I remember I used to be on my school bus like going home, and I would have his video up and I would like share earbuds with my friends, and we'd sit there and just be like, oh, I'm scared together, like the whole school bus ride. It was awesome. I loved it. I mean, his videos are really, really good. Obey the Walrus is a really horrifying video on the internet that shows a drag queen that has polio just moving around. And the reason why it's really scary is that due to the person having polio, the movements that the person makes are kind of unsettling and unnatural, and there's also like distorted music with it too. I'll put footage of it on here if you want to watch it. It's weird, man, you know. Opal is an animated short by Jack Stauber, which if you like my channel, you play like him because he's into weirdcore and dreamcore and that kind of thing. And Opal is a short film he made that shows a girl going into like a house and just seeing these like weird stuff going on around her. I'll show the footage on screen. It's kind of cool. Penpal is a creepypasta that was posted onto r/nosleep about a guy telling stories from his childhood that are all like kind of creepy and like weird, and they all revolve around his pen pal from when he was a kid, like someone he would like write to. And eventually he even turned that story into a full novel. I think this is really cool. I mean, this kind of thing gives a unique take to a lot of what would be usually kind of boring creepypastas, but yeah, I like this. Petscop is a web series about like a cursed video game. Basically, this guy gets a copy of a video game that's kind of a little bit off. It starts out being completely normal. It's a PS1 game, but then later on, he discovers parts of the world that are like not normal, like this grassiness and these like underground bunkers and stuff. It's really creepy. I love this series. Pyrocynical has, you know, his classic video on it. Waiting for Petscop 2, but yeah, this is a great web series. It's really creepy. Poochee and Pansy is a web series that's horror, obviously, about dogs, and it's kind of like a cute aesthetic for kids kind of thing, but then it has like the horror undertones and creepy moments that make it unsettling. There's like a creepy witch in it too that does witch stuff, and witches are scary. I think witches are really scary. Pseudopod is a podcast that is kind of like, imagine it as a virtual campfire, you know, where each episode is another scary story being told, but it's really cool because people can submit their stories to it, and then if it's good enough, I guess, they'll read your story on the podcast. r/nosleep, like I talked about earlier, is a subreddit where people can post their own creepypasta-esque stories, like scary stories, and it's just a platform for that. There are some really, really good stuff on here. Like, there's a lot of actually good stories on r/nosleep. If you ever have free time and you want to read something scary, just go on there, look at like the top posts or something. They're all pretty good. The Russian Sleep Experiment is a creepypasta about 15 prisoners in a Russian like experiment, like a research experiment. And what they would do is they would give these 15 people a gas that keeps them awake, so they wouldn't be allowed to go to sleep for like weeks upon weeks. And in the story, they went completely insane. Psychological, physiological effects, all sorts of scary stuff. Go read it for yourself. It's amazing. Like, I mean, I would get into it here, but it's too much to talk about. Salad Fingers is a web series that, like I said, is hosted and made by David Firth about a guy named Salad Fingers, and it's scary, but it's almost more so just unsettling, uncomfortable, and just gross, almost. It's kind of surreal, too, but it's kind of like its own thing. Like, David Firth has his own style. It's really weird. It's amazing. The sound design is incredible. The story, too. Like, there's a little bit of a story. Like, it's hard to piece together, but there are videos online that talk about the story behind it. But the art style here is just really unique and unsettling and just disgusting, like gross. Scare Theater is a well-known and well-respected content creator who talks about horror stuff on YouTube. He'll just go into like mysteries or horror stories or scary videos and stuff and explain it, talk about it. He's a great guy. He's a big influence and inspiration to me personally. So yeah, go check him out. After this video, don't click off. If you click off, then there's gonna be a little girl in your bed tonight. And that's, I think, scary enough, you know, in today's climate. Scaryforkids.com is a website that, from what I could tell, is just a website of scary stories for kids. Now, I'm not sure if I'm missing something, because this seems like something that would have, like, some underlying tones or an underlying story. You know, like, I feel like there's some kind of ARG going on here. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just being stupid, you know, I don't know. But it's a cool website. I mean, if it is real, then that's cool, I guess. Smile Dog is a really popular and famous creepypasta about like a cursed image file that, if you look at it, gives you death, pain, hallucinations, etc. And the image is this image that's very well known. It's horrifying. Sorry to jump scare you there. Editor, put a really scary jump scare noise there because that'll be really funny. Sonic.exe is a pretty well-known creepypasta about, it's kind of like the same thing as Been Drowned in a way, because it's about a cursed video game where this guy is given a cursed ROM of Sonic CD, and when he plays it, it's like really macabre, like there's blood everywhere, it's just unsettling and eerie, but there's not really much to say here. It's just, I mean, it's pretty well known, like anything I say has already been said a million times. Squidward's self-unaliving is a really interesting creepypasta. It's kind of similar to the Bart one I was talking about earlier because it's like supposed to be a lost episode of SpongeBob where Squidward goes insane, gets depressed, and eventually ends up self-unaliving. These ones are always weird to me because it would be interesting if it was like a real video, like if I could like watch it, right? If somebody actually made like a horror thing of like a SpongeBob episode that's just like messed up, that would be kind of scary, right? But just a story about it, and I'm not complaining or anything because I haven't made nothing that's like worthwhile, but I'm just saying, I think it'd be a lot more engaging to have like an actual video than just reading a story about it, personally. But it's still a cool idea. Did the mic pick up that thunder? Oh my gosh. It's like a perfect night to record this video. Squimpus McGrimpus, which, by the way, I want to add is a really cool name and it's fun to say, is a creator who makes VHS analog horror in the world of FNAF. He makes videos that add to or talk about the lore of FNAF, and they're just kind of more engaging and interesting ways of looking at the lore of FNAF, which is my favorite horror series if you know me. There are special videos like instruction tapes and more traditional analog horror kind of videos about FNAF, and they're all really cool. Really cool. I like it. The Magnus Archives is a podcast that is posited as being hosted by like the lead archiver / researcher at a research institute of supernatural activities. And it starts off seeming that every episode is pretty much just a scary story, like a spooky story about something supernatural. But then as they go on, you kind of start to realize that some of these stories are connected and that there's a whole big plot forming. And yeah, that's subtlety is king with horror. I love this stuff. The Rake is a creepypasta that is pretty famous. It started on a 4chan thread when people were asked to make a new creepy monstrous creature, and the Rake was invented. It's said to be a humanoid creature that has really long fingers and arms and glowing eyes. And the thing that it does, like the scary thing it does, is it's said to stalk its victims while they're sleeping especially and just stare at them, trying to stress them out and just give them fear rather than really hurting them from what I can tell. I mean, I think it does hurt people, but I think that its main thing is that it likes to stalk them and just fill them with like fear and dread. And in some narratives, the Rake even like whispers in people's ears while they're sleeping. And the Rake has become one of the most famous like creepypasta characters ever, so you probably already know about it, so I'm probably wasting your time with this entry, but still, it's pretty scary. Be careful when you go to sleep tonight. This man is a psychological horror experience kind of thing, where it's this website that has a picture of a flyer, a drawing of a man, and it says, "Have you seen this man in your dreams?" Where apparently people have seen that exact man in their dreams, like multiple people, a lot of people have. And then it was later found out to be just a social experiment, right? But the idea of that is really creepy, that there's a certain face that we see in all of our dreams. Like, where does it come from? I mean, I know it's not real, but I'm getting kind of scared just thinking about it. Like, I wasn't scared earlier, but just talking about it now is kind of like, whew. Ticci Toby is a character that is a little bit problematic. I was kind of debating putting it in here because I find it a little bit problematic. He's called Ticci Toby because he has Tourette's and he's always ticking, which I think is, I don't know, kind of funny in a way, but it's just like a little bit problematic. But his story is that he goes from being a mentally challenged child to growing up as a mentally deranged serial killer under the influence of Slender Man. He's depicted as wearing a mouth guard and goggles, and like wielding hatchets. And just like a lot of other characters in creepypastas, his story has been told a bunch of different ways. He's a pretty prominent figure, still problematic. Tribe 12 is a YouTube web series about a man who is investigating the death and I guess accounting the death of his friend. And through that, he starts seeing accounts of Slender Man. It's called Tribe 12 because the channel started out as being a Did you hear that? The channel got its name, Tribe 12, from the fact that the channel started out as a place for the main character to post his project for school about the 12 tribes of Israel. So then it's called Tribe 12, and it just kept the same name. But yeah, Slenderman stuff is also one of my favorite things, so I love this. I think it's really cool. Unwell is a podcast that's kind of like found footage kind of stuff, because it's about a woman who moves into a new home, and in that new home, stuff isn't always working right. She starts hearing things and seeing things that aren't supposed to be there, and it starts kind of driving her insane. Zalgo is an entity in horror that is kind of a meme more than anything. There's a lot of memes of it saying, "He comes," and then Zalgo appears. And he's kind of, it seems to be more like a joke than anything else. I mean, it's kind of scary, but it's whatever. There's a lot of Garfield comics with him, which I think is pretty funny. Alright, and that was the end of Layer 2. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe so you can see when Layer 3 comes out. I enjoyed making this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And again, please let me know if you like the camera or not, or if you want me to go back to just recording my voice, because I'm happy to do whatever y'all want. I hope you all have a great night, and I hope none of what I said is too scary. Sleep well.